Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Apologies for the slightly delayed start to the webinar, but welcome anyway. Today, we're looking into the REPowerEU plan and what it means for European solar. My name is Liam Stoker, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Joining me today is Naomi Chevillard, who is Head of Regulatory Affairs at SolarPower Europe. Now, the REPowerEU plan and solar strategy set in motion the wheels of a significant solar deployment throughout the rest of this decade, with a suite of policy levers designed to see the EU's solar capacity reach around 740 gigawatts DC by 2030. This is to be driven largely by a desire to see the continent wean itself off Russian gas, but equally, solar deployment means a considerable jump in our carbon credentials as well. But the question is now what it means for Europe's solar community in both the short and medium term, which is why Naomi joins us today. Before we start, though, some housekeeping. Today's Insight webinar is to last around 20 minutes, including some opportunities for audience questions as well. You can use the dialog box on your screen to submit those questions, and we welcome as many questions today as possible. The webinar is being recorded, and will be available on demand via PV Tech later today. But without any further ado, let's get started. Naomi, thank you very much for joining us. I guess if we could start with perhaps a summary of what would you consider to be the key takeaways from REPowerEU?
So I think, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to debrief this landmark moment with you and with your audience. I think the key takeaway is really this solar strategy accompanied with higher solar PV objective for 2025 and for 2030. We had in the past years objectives by the Commission that were below our business as usual scenarios, well below our business as usual scenarios. So I think at 350 gigawatts, whereas our business as usual scenarios showed 770 gigawatts by 2030. And now, finally, the Commission shows ambition and shows that we will go beyond the 750 gigawatts. The other thing is the solar strategy. We have now a solar strategy that will be really the guidance to develop our sector from the supply side, from the product side to the development side for utility scale and for PV.
Excellent. And is there any area where SolarPower Europe may have perhaps wanted more ambition or urgency? Any areas you feel that the plan might be lacking?
I mean, I want to start by just saying that it's it's not the end of the story for us. This document is more of a framing exercise, and especially because it had to be developed a bit in a rushed way. It was initially expected for end of June, and they had to publish it for early May. So I think it's a good document for the conditions that they had to develop it, and there will be work ahead. Where we could see more ambition and where we will work at having more ambition. I mean, a first point is the target. Of course, we wanted to have 1 terawatt solar by 2030. But again, I think we can be happy with the target that the Commission proposed. Maybe an area where we would like to have seen a bit more ambitious is on grid integration and solar and storage deployment. We know that the whole document aims at solving the gas shortage in a way, and solar and storage could support the unavailability of gas peakers, but there is literally no action on solar and storage. So we're working at having more language on that. And then another big problem is market intervention, so interventions of member states on pricing in markets. We had Spain and Portugal taking initiatives and capping gas used to produce electricity, and the Commission is basically endorsing this possibility. So this could open the door for other member states to do that. This is very disappointing.
All right, and running through the plan, obviously the plans have a lot of details around both utility scale solar, residential solar, and some of the more peripheral areas such as the really underlying need for skills. But starting on the utility scale side, there's mention of really directing a lot of utility scale solar deployment to these go-to areas. or the kind of what considerations goes into identifying what constitutes a go-to area?
So the go-to areas, it's a new concept. It's specific areas that member states have to define, where projects will be exempted from environmental impact assessment and will benefit from shorter permitting times. But it doesn't mean, that all the other areas are forbidden for solar PV. It's only if you want. The idea is to define a priority area where it is easier to deploy projects. But it doesn't mean that the rest is no-go areas. Now the devil is in the detail, and implementation will be key. So this will be a big point of attention for us.
Right, excellent. And moving kind of slightly down the scale, particularly onto rooftops, there's this glide path for new buildings to accommodate rooftop solar, all the way out from kind of 2026 to 2029. What must the industry do now to kind of ensure that those milestone dates kind of resonate not just with the solar sector, but equally the construction sectors as well?
I think first, so what you're mentioning is what you're referring to is the idea of a solar mandate. So having all new and renovated buildings having solar PV. So indeed, there are different deadlines depending on the type of buildings. The mandate applies earlier for commercial buildings. I think it's a reasonable measure. A number of states already have these solar mandates on residential buildings and on commercial buildings. So for us, there is no reason to wait. And there is no main obstacles to this measure. So the first thing to reach that ambition will be to accelerate and make this mandate a bit more ambitious. In particular, what we will be doing is ask that this mandate kicks in earlier than 2026 to 2029, but as early as 2025, for example. But then, as you say, more needs to be done. One thing that we are asking for is to have good self-consumption frameworks. We have a number of provisions on self-consumption in EU law that are being implemented, but we could go a bit further. In particular, we're looking at collective self-consumption, where electricity is shared in the neighborhood between different participants. Really think that there is a huge potential for commercial players, and having a thorough work of the Commission to implement or to develop these new models will be important. We know the Commission is mobilized on this, and it will be, I think, an important area of work again for the next month.
Excellent. And skills, obviously, it's a crucial discussion point for the sector in total. Really, if we're going to install 740 gigawatts less at one terawatt, like the industry is suggesting, we're going to need a significant increase in the numbers of highly trained designers, installers, grid engineers, the whole kind of the whole root and branch view of solar installation. What can stakeholders or people within the solar industry do to participate in or support the European Commission measures in this area?
Well, I think the industry has done already a lot. There are in a number of countries certification schemes for installers to be incentivized to retrain. There are a lot of communication campaigns. We have launched our own communication campaigns last year on the potential of solar jobs. And there are a lot of good efforts already done by the industry at national level that should continue to really communicate, raise awareness, make training schemes available to students. But I think on skills we also expect a lot from the public authorities. And this is where the solar strategy is a good news, because it proposes a skills partnership. And this skills partnership is supposed to coordinate the effort of all the actors in the training sector, so the universities, the private training institutions and the job platforms to coordinate all of these people to make sure that that training is available, that these jobs are known and valued at national level. There is also a need for the public authorities to provide clarity on certification schemes for installers. That's in the previous version of the Renewable Energy Directive. And simply what we also expect from public authorities is to have really decisive objective on the future of solar, because if it's very clear for the construction industry that all new buildings will have solar PV on the rooftop, I think it's a very powerful incentive for roofers to learn how to install modules, for electricians to know how to plug modules and inverters. So this will be also very important.
Excellent. And just to really touch on manufacturing relatively quickly, there was some analysis this week from Wood Mackenzie which highlighted the potential for REPowerEU to be stymied somewhat by a lack of domestic manufacturing in Europe. Does REPowerEU go far enough to stimulate that, and what are some other measures that might be explored if we are to really kind of trigger this European solar manufacturing renaissance, which has been spoken about for some years now?
But I think the proposals are already good. We've been working now for 2-3 years to structure the manufacturing space in Europe. We launched a European Solar Initiative, a manufacturing accelerator, then European Solar Initiative, so a sort of industry-led alliance to have a sort of collective or community of companies interested in this objective. We gathered around this organization in this space, like VDMA, like PV, SMC, to support this initiative. And what the Commission has published endorses all of these efforts in a way, and will give it, will bring it to the next stage, because what the Commission proposes is to have an industrial alliance which will absorb the European Solar Initiative, but add a sort of political layer where this alliance is also involving more decisively ministries of national member states and the European Commission. Now it's not enough to be together in the same room. What we think we should, it's a good infrastructure, let's say, to take the right decisions, but the right decision we will expect are, I think, twofold. The first thing is that we need a proper strategic action plan. That's what we asked for a while. We need to have visibility on how factories can be brought online, how they can, in the long term, have the right conditions to compete with foreign competitors. So I'm talking electricity price, material price, valuation also of sustainability of products. And the second thing is reflect on how companies can access EU financing. We have a lot of financing in the EU for investment, for industrial investment, but it's difficult for companies to access them because there's still a bit of uncertainty whether the financing can be given to solar PV factories. So what we need is to see how we can coordinate and facilitate access to financing for EU manufacturers.
Excellent. Well, just a timely reminder, really, that you can absolutely submit questions to Naomi using the questions tab on your screen. We have run the poll so far this afternoon, surveying just the confidence in the contents of the plan to kind of really stimulate deployment and reach that target. Just over half, so 55%, that remain unsure. So there's clearly some kind of mixed response to the contents of the plan so far, I would say, or certainly the poll may suggest that. Naomi, I guess one question from my side, or one additional question rather. What are the next steps now? Where does the REPowerEU plan go from here?
I think a big next step is extra money and how member states will use that money, because the REPowerEU package comes with proposals to reinforce the recovery and resilience facility, which is, if you remember, a big pot of money given to national governments through loans and grants to react to the COVID crisis. So this pot of money will be reinforced with 20 billion euros, probably by the end of the year, specifically for member states to diversify energy supplies and mitigate the consequences of the Russian war. And member states will have to draft recovery and resilience plans to explain how they will use the money, and making sure that solar solutions are also taken into account next to, for example, further LNG imports or biomass deployment will be very important. That's what I was mentioning. We should, if we don't have gas peakers anymore, we shouldn't import LNGs and put it in gas turbines. We should deploy solar and storage. So that's what we need to ensure in those plans. That's for the very short term. And in the long term, there are a number of regulatory work that will be done. So, for example, on the Goto areas, we will complete a negotiation with the Parliament and the European Council by the end of the year. And then there is more long-term work to be expected on the Industrial PV Alliance, on the guidance for agri-PV and floating PV, etc. So there will be a number of things happening at EU level.
Excellent. And just to pick up on the point around gas peakers and energy storage in particular, energy storage was perhaps, well, certainly the energy storage industry was a little bit disappointed by the plan, a lack of mention of energy storage or in any great detail. What's the consideration there? Was that disappointment, or was it a case of it's part of a broader discussion to have around, like you say, the response is replacing gas peakers with solar and energy storage?
But I think I don't want to talk about the disappointment, because the situation is particularly difficult for governments, and I think we have to acknowledge that they've been facing with. I mean, they're trying to prepare for a full disruption of gas supplies, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. But it's true that they rely on the good old technologies to face the crisis. And again, who am I to blame them? What we need to do as an industry is show them that we are here also as an alternative solution. So, and for the moment, we haven't shown them that enough. So we've called for that since the beginning of the year as SolarPower Europe, of course. But we need to make sure that it's a bit more present. So in that sense, yes, the REPowerEU doesn't result enough on innovative solutions. Yeah.
I'm going to take one question here. I'm going to slightly rephrase it. There's obviously there's a real need if we're going to talk around European solar manufacturing. There's a real need here to hit sufficient scale. The question we have illustrates the fact that China can deploy tens of gigawatts of module manufacturing capacity in months, which is something that we haven't seen in Europe. One of the big conclusions that certainly we took away from Intersolar last month was the need for manufacturing, if it is to be successful, has to hit those kind of 5-10 gigawatt plus marks that we haven't quite seen in Europe before. What is there a sufficient stepping stone to hit those targets, or what's really needed for the European manufacturing sector to hit those kind of numbers?
I think on that, it's not. I don't think it's black or white. It's we won't be mimicking what China does. We will invent our own way, and I think the US, for example, is also trying to do the same. So we should build on that. I don't think tomorrow we will have a 50 gigawatt fab in 11 months. I don't think this is, in general, the mindset of our EU governments. We're talking more about strategic autonomy. So strategic autonomy is to have it's to continue to import a number of products, so solar panels, but also masks, for example, from elsewhere, but have on site a strategic capacity so that we know that in case there is a disruption, COVID measures in Shanghai, you have your own production to alleviate a bit the supply disruption, that you also don't lose the knowledge on how to manufacture the product. I think that's a bit the approach. also because we know that China in its manufacturing policies loses a lot of money, and I don't think anything is to replicate in the Chinese industrial policy. So voilà. Now I said that. Now our own way is to be, for me, that would be developing a strategic action plan, looking a bit also at what the battery industry has done, and a combination of investment tools, and we have some. The EU just invested into a 3 gigawatt plant in Italy. So really mobilizing these investment tools, and at the same time, making sure that the products compete not only on price again, but also on, for example, sustainability.
Excellent. I'm just going to touch on one more question here then. I think it really does stem in from the discussion we've already had. We have this big centralized plan now. Is the next big question how this is implemented by different member states and what their actions are?
But I think the first concrete implementation will be the recovery and resilience plans that we should all be looking at. But so that's for the very short term. For the medium term, indeed, it will be. For example, how the member states will develop their go-to areas for renewables, how they will design their solar mandates, etc. I mean, the devil will be in the detail again. Here we're really pushing the EU as much as possible be in a role of enabler, so provide an idea of best practices, monitor when things are implemented or not, but not necessarily micromanage what the member states should do. And yeah, that will be very important. It's interesting on permitting in particular. We've seen the Commission doing that in a very good way. They nominated. They asked member states to nominate one contact point in the ministries of economies and budget to solve permitting bottlenecks, and I think it's an interesting, innovative way of tackling the problem.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Just a quick reminder that today's webinar will be available on demand shortly. Thank you once again to Naomi for joining us, sharing all of that brilliant insight, and indeed to our audience for their attention today. Our next PV Tech Insights webinar, the details will be shared shortly on PV Tech, so keep your eyes peeled on the website for that. But there's nothing left for me to do but to thank you all once again, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Liam, and get in touch if you want to know more. Thank you.